is going on, everyone? Welcome to the second episode of Comics and Coffee, where we talk about, discuss, and dive into everything in the craft and world of comics. I am one of your co-hosts, Alex Batts. Joining me again today is my great friend, Evan McGuire. How are you doing, man?
Not bad. It's a little early. Full disclosure up front, I'm without a mic stand, so I'm just gonna try to keep this off screen. But I am holding this, so
just like decided to go for it at the beginning. Let everyone know.
Had to, because I already saw it before we started to go, and I was like, it's going back and forth, and it just looks like it's not on anything. So I had to put it out there.
Hey, man, it happens. It happens. You gotta. I applaud you for adapting.
Thank you.
Adapt.
Thank you.
Dude, I totally forgot the phrase. It's adapt, something, and overcome.
I missed it.
Know. Dude, it's 3 words, and I just can't remember one of the words. But yeah, so we're back for the second episode now. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll see that we have video, which I'm pretty excited about. Shout out to Sean for this like sick overlay thing that we have. I think it came out really, really well.
Yeah, no, it looks bomb.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It looks very nice. So be sure to check that out. If you are just listening on the podcast podcast networks like Podbean and Spotify and Stitcher, obviously you won't see it there. But if you're listening and watching on YouTube, you'll see that it'll make the video side of things more engaging, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, with that said, like, we can just go ahead and go into it. I have another like big Batman event to talk about this week, but I was wondering if you wanted to start off with like your book this time, since we started with mine last week.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think that at least for this book, you and I can have a more well-rounded conversation about it, because you and I have both read it.
Yeah, actually, you were like, oh yeah, I'm going to talk about this book, and I was like, oh, I have those issues. I'm just going to plow through those real quick. So
I'm glad you did, because it's like, it is a very quick read. And it's just like a really good indie book. So the book that we're going to be talking about first is called Invisible Kingdom. It's written by Willow Wilson and drawn by Christian Ward. Shout out to Sal Cipriano. I think that's his name. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but the lettering in this book is so phenomenal. I feel like letterers don't usually get their due when people talk about their work. So.
Oh, dude, 100%. I try to tag them whenever I like post about stuff a lot of the time, because I feel like they're so overlooked, but it's such a like important part of like, if you don't have the letters there, you don't have any of the words.
Exactly.
Like,
and it's just like, it is a visual aspect of the medium. Like it kind of bridges the gap between the art and the writing, which is pretty cool. You get to play with some fun things there, like with the onomatopoeias and just the way that the way that people say things and things like that. It's just, there's a lot to do there, and there's a lot of creativity behind it, and I feel like people just kind of overlook that a lot of the time.
100%. I really, one of the things that I like that like immediately stood out to me in this book, and this probably definitely came from like the script side of things from Willow Wilson, but like the fact that the nuns in the book are like spelled None.
I love that so
like
much.
Nun, which I'm sure we'll get into all the religious stuff that this book, has like in it as we get further. But like that, I was like, oh, that's genius. Like that's such a smart way to do that.
Right off the bat, dude, it was such an interesting element of the story, and you knew that it was going to play into it more down the line. One of the biggest interests for me, or one of the biggest draws that I had towards this was like, I found the latter 3 issues. There's up to 4 right now. I found the latter 3 at my local comic shop a couple of weeks ago, and I was so captivated by the art. And you and I were talking a little bit ago about Christian Ward and just how amazing his style is. So once I saw this on the shelf, I said to the owner, like, I need you to get me number 1 of this so that I can read it. And I really wasn't expecting to enjoy the story as much as I did. Brief synopsis of it so far is just, it's I like how it's like 2 parallel stories being told. One of this captain of like a cargo ship, intergalactic cargo ship, whatever. It's like Lux is like what would you call it? It's like an intergalactic Amazon, right?
I mean, yeah, they're like Amazon and like Google and Apple, like they're just like, they own the like this small solar system pretty much, which I don't know if you read the back matter for like the first issue, I think. Like, I love how G. Willow Wilson mentioned that it's not it's a sci-fi series one.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
I guess we should preface that.
Put that up top.
But so it's a sci-fi series, but I like how it's a sci-fi series without like light speed and stuff. Like, this solar system just has 4 planets that are like really close together that are all like habitable, and so I think that's interesting. But yeah, Lux is like just a giant corporation basically that like runs everything.
Yeah,
kind of.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're selling people stuff, and a big thing of this is a big theme in this is you don't know what you're buying, or you're mindlessly buying things, which is kind of the way that things are going now. People just kind of mindlessly buy things. We have things like Amazon drones delivering right to our doorsteps. We are getting to a point where we don't even need to leave our houses for really anything. So to see that kind of blown up to this proportion is pretty cool, because we see this Captain Grix. I think it's Grix, right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it's Grix.
She becomes like pretty disenchanted with this whole thing, because they go down on a planet, and then she's going through like the inventory log or whatever, and sees that money's being siphoned from the company to this private account. And so there some trouble arises with that on the back end of things with the company. But then I love that we're getting this parallel story of a girl, Vess, who is just like, she just feels like there's more to her life than being stuck on her home world with her parents, and she tells her parents that she's leaving to go follow the path to the invisible kingdom, essentially like becoming a part of this monastery, becoming a nun, but she also finds a bit of disenchantment with that herself. Like, she doesn't feel that entire sense of fulfillment that she was looking for, because she finds the opposite end of what Grix found, and that the money being siphoned from Lux is actually being fed into the monastery, which they're called the Renunciation, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And towards the middle to end of the 3rd issue, the last full issue, we get this interaction between Vess and Grix, because they were kind of on separate paths leading them to an intertwining, and it's going to be really interesting going forward with this to see how they interact in person, because their stories, I feel, were so closely tied that obviously it was bound to culminate in their eventual meeting. But I mean, we've only scratched the surface of that, and we're issue 4. Spoilers for all of this, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I forgot to mention that at the beginning, because I thought about it last week. I was like, man, we should really put a spoiler warning like at the beginning of the episode, because we're totally just diving into these books like completely.
Well, sorry, Sean, that's another job for you. No.
Yeah, spoiler warning.
Yeah, so like we see the they get confronted with the giant Lux ship at the end of the 4th issue, so we know that like they're kind of cornered in space. They don't have a lot of fuel, and they're pretty much at the mercy of Lux. And it's just, I don't know. It's a very compelling story so far, and I've been gripped in the first 4 issues. And for an indie book to do that for me, I mean, I was hooked in the first issue, so for an indie book to do this for me is so exciting, because I don't have a lot of indie books on my pull.
Yeah, I know you. I mean, I don't remember you talking about like a lot of indie books in general that you've like read. I know that you have like interest in them, obviously.
Yeah,
and of course
definitely.
are open to like more books, but I don't know a whole lot of them that you've actually read. So I was actually really hyped whenever you like sent me the message. You were like, yeah, I want to talk about like Invisible Kingdom, because I was like, oh shit, like, because I have a couple different. This is one of the indie books that I have on my pull.
Yeah.
But I like am in the habit of letting my single issues for indie books kind of pile up for a little bit. That way I can read them
definitely
like a trade, which I said this to you, but it's so not cost effective. But I've got to have those floppies, like just for collection purposes. I have to. So
that's part of the only reason that I keep collecting some stuff on my pull that I don't necessarily read right away, because I'm like, it's just like the collector in me, dude. I gotta have them.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't not get that single issue.
Exactly.
Like, oh, did you see that cover though? Like, come on.
And you get to see so many of them. Like when you go to your local comic shop and pick up, you get to pick up your pull. Like you can just peruse the wall and like, oh, this looks cool. Something I actually started asking my the boss there to do. The owner, whatever.
Same thing.
Same thing. Something I asked him to do was like, partially for inspiration for the work that I'm going to be doing. I want to have inspiration from all fronts to like draw from for my work. So I was like, anytime number one, like cool indie number ones come in that you think I would, because he kind of like knows what I'm about. So I was like, anything that you think I'd be into, just like throw it in, throw a number one in, and I'll go through it and see if I dig it. I'm not gonna find winners.
Pretty rad.
Yeah, I'm not gonna find winners all the time that way, but I feel like more often than not, I'll probably find stuff that catches my eye. There were a couple of other ones that we could talk about at a later week that I just picked up yesterday, though. One of them is called Thumbs, and the other one, I'm drawing the blank on the name, but they have like very vivid art styles. That's like what the drawing for me is right off the rip.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, naturally.
Yeah, the content kind of comes second, but you know that's the nice thing about like stuff that's not on your pull list. You can just kind of take it and see if you dig it before you have to get committed to it, which I really like.
Yeah.
A little tangent there, whatever.
No, I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
I think that's nice. It's kind of on, like, I mean, not really the same note, but, like, as far as relationship with people working at, like, comic shops, the people that work at the shop that I go to are, like, trained where, like, any cover that, like, they get in that has Scarlet Witch on it, they just, like, automatically pull it for me.
I like
Like,
it.
even if I'm not reading, like, the book, they're just like, oh, okay, Alex wants this.
Yeah,
Like,
I like that you say that they're trained. That's funny.
no, I mean, it's true. It's what happened. Like,
No,
the,
definitely.
I don't know if you saw it. I sent it in chat actually whenever it happened, but that like Deadpool like Marvel's variant that had like Vision and Scarlet Witch.
Yep.
Like, dude, they pulled that for me, and I was like,
Beautiful.
oh, thank you so much. Which also, short tangent, that is a print that Sideshow Collectibles just like put on sale on like Friday,
Really?
I think. Yeah, and I got the like the email for it before it was going live, and so I was like RSVP, cause like, you know, of course want to like get that.
Definitely.
Adi Granov is the artist, by the way, if anyone wants to look it up.
Yeah, it's
I
beautiful.
might have Sean throw it up on the video thing. Yeah, it's a gorgeous print.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, I was just imagining. I knew it wasn't gonna be like cheap. I was like, oh, it'll probably be like $80 to like $100, you know, like whatever.
Sure.
I'll fuck, cause it's a limited edition thing too. There's only like 150 of them, so I was like, whatever. I'll like shell out the money. They're my favorite, dude. Did you see how much that thing is?
No, I didn't.
It's $280.
If I
I
had
was
coffee
like-
in my mouth right now, I'd spit it all over my comments.
Dude, I was like, why do you hate me so much? Like, God, dude. One of that
$280.
prints-
That's crazy. That's highway robbery, man.
And like, I mean, it's like there's 150, and it's like signed by him, and it comes framed and like matted and everything, so like super nice. But I was like, fuck, dude, I can't do $280
No,
like
that's
for
That's
that.
a lot, man.
Yeah, I was like, but
It is,
yeah, there's
it
my
is
short
cool, though.
tangent.
No, definitely.
No, it's great, but no, yeah, but like back to the book.
Oh, yeah.
It's so good, honestly. Like I really love it. I remember I think it was announced. I want to say like NYCC last year.
Oh, okay.
Sounds right. Because I remember whenever, because I've been following Christian Ward for like a pretty, ever since like Black Bolt.
Yeah.
With him and like Saladin Ahmed. Totally probably said his name incorrectly. But which is another fantastic book.
Yeah, I've been meaning to read that, especially after picking this up, dude. Just if nothing for Ward alone.
Oh, dude, there's one splash page from that series that I will never be over. Like how great it looks.
Really?
Yeah. It's so good. I actually need to finish that series. I've only read the first like 6 issues or so.
How long did it go for?
11 or 12.
Oh, okay.
I think. Yeah. But yeah, so I've been following CJ Ward like since then, and I remember he was like teasing that he'd be working on like a sci-fi book, and then I want to say it was announced at NYCC last year. I may be wrong, but that timeline like seems right because it was still like a couple months away, and then now we're like 4 issues in. But yeah, and so like I remember being really hyped about this because Willow Wilson is also a phenomenal writer, and
Oh my gosh.
they were just talking about how it would have it's a sci-fi like experience that's also diving into all these like religious and corporate like overtones
Yeah.
and kind of and like themes, and I was like, it's like, okay, yeah, you have my interest. And yeah, I think that they're doing a really, really good job. One of like world building just right off the bat.
They really throw you into it right away, but it's not too muddy, and you really like they make it so easy for you to like see yourself in this world and to see it as like a natural progression for like where we could be as like humanity, which is kind of interesting because one of the things that I read in the what did you call it in the back of the first
Back
issue?
matter.
Back matter, yeah. they talk about how they wanted these characters to be like, not like visually human, like not have like visual human traits other than being like bipedal or whatever, but they're still like very much human characters, which is makes it a lot easier to kind of grasp what they're like to grasp the scope of what they're doing.
Yeah, but they're not humans, but they have a humanity,
right?
Basically.
Exactly.
Like
some things that I just like purely aesthetically, like the color palette is amazing and very like it's very in your face when it needs to be, but in a way like when there are very like tender moments happening, or when there are very intense moments happening between like two people, like in a conversation or whatever, the color palette is subdued enough to really make you feel the gravity of the situation. And then you get like, that'll be counteracted with, a big bombastic splash page, which I just like the way that CJ Ward handles the way that space just looks. Like there doesn't even need to be any planets around. Just like, there are a couple of pages where the ship that they're in, which is called the Sundog, I love that name. I just think it's so like, it's so cool.
So cool.
And I feel like it almost doesn't fit with the rest of the tone of this, but it also like,
that's what makes it fit.
Yeah, it brings a little levity to it, which is cool. But there are some like splash pages where it'll be taking off out of a planet's atmosphere, and it's just like a dot on the page essentially, but you know exactly what it is because it has like the jet stream and whatever. It's so cool, and very like a very innovative book. And the way that they do the storytelling, I feel like it's a very hard line to walk when you're telling two stories simultaneously that need to then intersect at one point.
Yeah.
Because they balance out the stories really well, and the way that they like flow in and out of each other really helps like the way that each other story is told, if that makes sense. Like
yeah, there's a really good balance there.
Yeah.
Like you don't spend too much time with one or the other. Like
yeah.
You're not reading and you're like, oh, I've been with this character for like a little long. I wonder what's happening like with the other one. Like every time you like go back to the other character, you're like, oh yeah, like this feels right. Like
yeah.
And it just is a very natural like progression
yeah.
for both of them.
And between the both of them, what I find very compelling is like they seem like two sides of the same coin to me, where Grix is like a little bit more worn and kind of aware of the goings on of society, and she's already become disenchanted with the way that things operate. And so this doesn't really come as a surprise to her when she finds this money being siphoned, and she just more has to deal with like getting her team out of this sticky situation for their survival. And then on the flip side, we have Vess, who's just like desperately looking for something to believe in because she feels like there's a greater purpose out there for her. But then we see this inner conflict where she comes across the receiving end of that news of that money being siphoned, and then she just feels completely lost because she has gone on this long journey to get to this monastery where she thought she was going to find all of these answers, and she wound up with a couple of more questions than she anticipated, and she still wants to believe in them, but she doesn't know if she can.
Yeah. It's a very interesting contrast, like, between the both of them.
Yeah.
I know, I love Grix's, like, just hardness.
Yeah.
Her, like, edge. She's just, like, so fed up with a lot of, like, pretty much everything.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully
and, like,
so, because I can't imagine all that she's gone through up until this point.
Yeah. And then she's just so tired of, like, just, like, literally just delivering packages for, like, a living.
Yeah, because she,
and, like,
she seems like she has more, which I guess like kind of puts her closer to Vess. She seems like she has more to offer to the world, but that side of her just seems stifled at this point when we meet her, you know?
Yeah, and especially with the way that, just how, like, overpowering, I guess, for, like, I don't know if that's the right word, but, like, just the pressure of, like, looks, like, as a company.
Oh,
and, like,
absolutely.
how, like, you, like, can't do anything, really.
Yeah.
Like, they're in complete control.
They have the final say on everything, you know? They're trying to...
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they even have a corporate liaison, I would assume, on every cargo ship.
Yeah.
And that seems like it puts a big burden on the crew. Maybe not even the crew, but Grix specifically, because it's like, you know, you have to walk on eggshell. You feel like you have to walk on eggshells because that person could potentially just be reporting back to corporate every time you do something different.
Yeah, for literally everything you do, and then you just have to worry about that.
Yeah. And then they introduce us to the romantic involvement that that Grix has with
the liaison. I don't remember her name.
Eileen or Eline?
Yeah.
Something like that. I think it's spelled Eline.
That sounds right.
Yeah. But then you find out that they were previously romantically involved, so that also adds a layer of her distrust, which I guess makes sense. It's not all just because, like, oh, you're corporate. Like, there is some pre-existing tension there. I hope at some point we get some, like,
flashback?
Like prequel stuff, because it just, I feel like with a story being fleshed out like this, I want it, and I don't often say that about stories. Usually what I'm doing is enough, but I'm like, I do want to kind of know what led up to this.
How'd they get here?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a testament to, like, the world building, like I mentioned earlier. 100%. Like, if you're able to be thrown into a world and it's already, like, realized enough to where you're like, oh, how did we get here?
Yeah.
Like, how did this happen? I think that's just, like, strong world building and character, like, construction.
Definitely.
And no, yeah, I love Grix's, like, story. I love the like interactions between the crew, how like they're all established, like they're obviously a dysfunctional family, which is like what you imagine in your head with most, like, it's just kind of like the stereotype that we have with like crews in space, you know, like I'm gonna throw out the Guardians of the Galaxy, obviously is the one that we would know the most. That's the most, like, recognizable for us, and they're, I mean, obviously a household name now thanks to the MCU, which is pretty cool.
Definitely.
But, like, you definitely get that, like, ragtag, like, where they obviously, like, butt heads a lot, but, like, their family, like, trying to, like, just make it, you know.
Yeah, because if it came down to it and they didn't care about each other, then, you know, Grix would probably be like, I have to get me and is it her little brother? Rash? Wrath,
I think,
Rash.
Yeah, it's her brother.
Her little brother's name is not Rash. But she, like, you know, she could just be like, I'm taking my brother and getting out of here. But, like, they do.
Yeah, we're just dipping.
They make it a point to, like, they all are like, we're in a shitty situation, but we're in a shitty situation together. So that makes for some interesting dynamics when shit hits the fan.
Yeah, it does. I really like Vess's story a lot.
Me too.
Like,
me too.
I think hers is probably my, like, favorite, like, of the series. I just think, because, I mean, she is Rulian.
Yep. Is
her, like, species. She's from the planet Rule.
Yep.
Which, one, I think it's really interesting that, like, they established there are 4, like, distinct, like, sexes from Rule. And, like, it's, like, up, down, left, and right.
Yeah.
It's, like, how they, like, describe them, which I just think is really interesting. And apparently, like, she is a down, which is, like, I can't. I'm gonna have to look for it.
It's like
they say it.
It's like a universal, not universal gender, but what I kind of took from that was like how O negative is like universally compatible.
A universal blood type.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like because they say it specifically in one of the issues, like her parent, because there's a flashback to, like, her wanting to, like, leave.
Yeah, well, they want her to stay. Well, maybe not so much. Her father wants her to stay because they want, like, their species is dying, and they want her to help, like, repopulate it, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. She goes. She's, like, arguing with her parents about leaving, and she's like, I'm not gonna settle down with 3 spouses and pop out a dozen babies just because I happen to be a universal genetic recipient.
That's what it is. Universal
how it's, like, said.
Recipient.
Like I knew there was exactly, and, like, you immediately, like, know what she's saying. You're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
And it totally makes sense, like, for why she doesn't want to stay, because she's like, you know, I get that our species is dying out, but I have a larger purpose than just continuing that. Like, that's not going to be my legacy.
Yeah. And so she finds this. I mean, it's a religion, pretty much.
No, definitely is.
And so they, like, walk the path. It's the path. The path is the thing that they, like, go for and, like, go through.
The path to the invisible kingdom.
Yeah. And so she has to find the renunciation, like, blindfolded.
Yep.
And that's how like the story actually starts, is her like walking through like the city and doing that. And she like gets there, and then she's like immediately taken in by Mother Proxima, is
Yep.
like the leader of the like the renunciation basically.
Yep.
And she's given a very like important task of being the like
Scriptorian.
historian. Yeah, scriptorian, that's what it was. Where she just basically like catalogs like their history and the events, and like it's bookkeeping and stuff like that, like essentially. And you know, that's where she finds the other half of what you were saying, of what Grix finds, where she sees that the account that the money is being siphoned to
Yep.
is a private account for Mother Proxima. And this is where her conflict comes in, because part of the renunciation is renouncing basically everything material.
Yep.
Like in the world, like you're not, it's a very spiritual thing, obviously, that you're not supposed to be, you know, still drawn and connected to all these outside influences
Right.
and things like that. And so she's immediately like, okay, well, if we're not supposed to be like that, then like why is Mother Proxima taking these, like, I would assume like billions of dollars from Lux, which is the prime like enemy. She even calls them like the enemy
Yeah.
of the renunciation.
Yeah.
And so like that's a big conflict for her, and like she doesn't know what to do, and because like she feels like her path is, you know, to find the invisible kingdom and be on this path and be a part of the renunciation.
Yeah.
And like part of that is like supposed to be obedience, and so she's immediately like conflicted with that, but she feels like she like has to do the right thing. And so like, you know, she does, and that's what kind of draws her like into, you know, the path with like Grix.
Yeah.
I just like, I love her as a character, and like her like
She's-
moral dilemma
And
and still like,
I think there are a couple more layers to her story right now, and I have to agree with you that for right now, she's the character that I'm drawn to the most in this book, because she just like, she has those layers, and she, you know, has those moral conflicts within her. And she did something so interesting. Once she found out, she brought it to Mother Proxima's attention, which I feel
Yeah.
like in these kind of situations, when it's setting up a story like this, the person who finds out usually keeps quiet about it. So that was kind of an interesting like turn of events, and to see Mother Proxima's reaction. Like, I don't know if it was because Vess just felt threatened and felt the need to say this, but she said that was a test, wasn't it? And then Mother Proxima like goes along with it. I don't know if Vess did that to like kind of throw her off the scent or whatever a little bit.
yeah.
But
That whole conversation was really interesting.
it was very interesting, and it was very ominous, because
yeah,
then,
dude,
like,
it was so scary.
and it just changes past that point. Like, Mother Proxima seems to be attacking Vess specifically when they're having like rituals and like meetings and stuff and meditation, like when she's speaking to all of the nuns.
Yeah.
And what's her name?
Kriska, I think.
Kriska.
It might just be Krissa.
Kriko, I think.
Okay.
Who, once she's gone, Vess kind of like signals back and like has a conversation with her, and even Kriko is like, Mother Proxima isn't the same anymore ever since you did what you did. But like, she still believes in Vess, but she's like, everything here is like a muck now.
Yeah, this shit's fucked up
yeah,
pretty much.
kind of backtracking a little bit to one of those specific instances where Mother Proxima is talking, like one of the pages that I found the most compelling after that dynamic had been established is it's like it's the page after a splash page with 4 long shots, and Mother Proxima is just like walking back and forth between all of the nuns, and she's saying, you know, to distrust anything we cannot possess, and and we possess first with our eyes. Like, that's what she's kind of saying, that the world is teaching people to live, how the world is teaching people to live. They're taught to live by fearing what they cannot see, but they take sight away from the nuns. The nuns have to veil themselves from the world. And she goes on to say that the greatest temptation comes not from without, but from within. Disobedience, pride, thinking that you understand the path in ways that your teachers do not. But it's so interesting because they're blinding they're nuns. Like, she's blinding the nuns and telling them to live in this way. But if you think about it in terms of like the grand scheme of this book, she's doing exactly what Lux is doing, just in a different way. And I feel like to reach these people who are disenchanted by Lux, like they came to an agreement, like this is how we are going to control the entire society, like the two halves of this society.
Yeah, because you have the people that are like falling in line with Lux, and then you have the people that don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
But then they're just drawn to the renunciation, which we, you know, as an outsider, obviously, can see that they're like two halves of this control over the system.
If you're not going to be blinded by materialistic necessity, then you are going to be blinded by this path that you are put on by Mother Proxima, and just obey her essentially without question. And that opens up a whole nother discussion of organized religion, and I don't know if we want to get into that now, but there are some interesting parallels that you can draw. Obviously that's the reason that it was written, but
there's a lot there that like
I don't want to upset any listeners. That's why I don't know if we should get into it. But
I'll refrain from getting too much into it. I do have pretty strong feelings about this, but
no, so do I.
And it's one of the reasons that I really appreciate this book, though, because I like that it's going there and opening up that discussion.
It presents the questions that I feel like some people, at least, and this is the extent that I will put myself into this, but these questions that like I raise myself, and I know that like people around me kind of raise in the face of organized religion. So to have this at the forefront of such an explosive medium, especially like in this day and age, like I feel like there's a real voice for this kind of stuff in comic books, and to see this explored on this level and to see where it's potentially going is just very fascinating, and I feel like very powerful.
And then also in just such a like an incredible like sci-fi like package as well. Like there's so much to love about it in general, and then it's also like asking these questions and exploring these topics and themes.
And that's what I feel like it always comes back to for us. Like the reason I feel like you and I are able to have these conversations about comics is because, there are these big, explosive stories about people with, hammers and people who can fly and people who wear capes, and then like, on the other side of things, like big sci-fi epics. But when you dig below the surface a little bit, like, it is entertainment, but it really does make you question things about humanity and about the things that you see in your everyday life as the reader. There are things that you can take away, but a comic book makes these questions a lot more digestible in this sort of package, as you put it, which is so fascinating because I feel like a lot of people don't initially look at comic books like that, but once they take the time to, it's like it opens up a whole nother level of enjoyment for this medium.
I mean, like, I really do, like, I stand by the fact that these are like, they're modern mythology.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Like,
and I've had that conversation a couple of times, like when I used to work in my local comic shop, and it's it's so, because it's so true. It's like the parallels there are undoubtedly undeniable.
Undeniably,
yes.
They're undeniably there.
Words.
I actually have I have a funny story. This is a slight tangent. I don't remember if I've told you this before. But I was watching the special features for Batman '89 like a month or so ago.
Oh, awesome!
And dude, so good, by the way. But Michael Uslan, who, if you don't know him, he's been the executive producer on every Batman movie since Batman '89.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's actually, dude, I cannot have more respect for that man. Which I'll kind of explain why in a second.
Okay,
but
cool.
I don't remember like what the year was. I want to say it was like the 70s, maybe early 80s. It was either the late 70s or early 80s, but there's a college in California, which I also can't remember. I don't remember the name. But at the time, they had a program where if you had a unorthodox course that you wanted to teach, and like get a, like have it be accredited, you could pitch your idea to the dean and like the board. And if it got approved, you could, you teach it as an accredited college course.
Wow.
And so Michael Uslan saw that, and he was like, "Well, I'm going to teach a course about comic books." And so he goes in, and he's got like the dean sitting there, looking at him like over his glasses, like at the other side of the table. Yeah. And he's like, the dean is like, "So you're the man who wants to teach about funny books, like at my college." And he's like, "Look, I like appreciate what you're trying to do. Like I used to read comics all the time when I was growing up. Superman's my favorite." But he's like, "But you cannot convince me that these are modern myths and like modern folklore. Like, I'm sorry, like it's just not going to happen." And Michael Uslan was like, okay. He was like, are you familiar with the story of Moses? And the guy was like, yeah. He was like, can you tell me the story of Moses? And I apologize for any listeners that know this well. I am going to butcher some of these like details. But he was like, essentially I don't remember who was being murdered, but a lot of people were being murdered in mass. And Moses' parents sent him as like a baby. They like wrapped him up in a blanket in a basket and sent him down the river to save him from being killed. And he's found by this like other group of parents, and he's raised in this society, and he grows up and he becomes a hero to them, and he like saves them. And he was like, okay. He was like, now you said that you read Superman growing up and that Superman was your favorite. And the dean was like, yeah. And he was like, can you like tell me the story of Superman? And he's like, well, there's a dying planet like Krypton, and his parents like wrap him up in a like blanket and send him off to Earth, and he crash lands in Kansas, and he's found by these parents, and they raise him, and then he stopped in the middle of his sentence, and he was like, your course is accredited.
That's amazing. That is like,
yeah, dude.
That seems like something that would happen in a comic book.
Yeah, and like and that is actually like that completely changed like Michael Uslan's life, because after his course ended up being accredited, which what a pitch, like
so amazing.
So good. Yeah, dude, so good. But after that happened, like Stan Lee and a bunch of like publishers for DC like heard about it and like reached out to him and stuff, and his like mission was to make a darker Batman movie. He like obviously like appreciated the 66 show,
yeah,
but he didn't like that what Batman had become in pop culture was just the like pap, like bam, and like pow and things like that.
Yeah.
And so like he wanted to take Batman back to the darker roots, and so he's actually the reason that like Batman Films Inc. was like established, and like he's the driving force behind getting a darker Batman movie. And so like he's essentially the reason that we have like Batman 89, and then as a result everything else.
I never knew that. That's so fascinating.
Yeah, so shout out to Michael Uslan, but that's just
out.
like, yeah, but that like goes to show that like these are like modern myths and like modern mythology and like
the
folklore.
People who create these books have a lot to say about, like they have a lot to comment on about society, and they know how to do it in a way that people will not just shy away from these conversations. Because I feel like in everyday life, people are so like getting to the point that this society is with Lux, people are so infatuated with materialism and just kind of submerge themselves in that and get stuck in their mind, and they see the world as just operating in one way, and they refuse to kind of take a step back and look at things through a different lens. And I feel like comic books, like once you open up a comic book and read it, you have opened yourself up to some extent that lens, that like a different lens to look through, to see your life as. That doesn't make sense. But like
no, it makes sense.
A different lens, like look through at your life and the things that occur in your life, and there are a lot of parallels, and like that's why comic books will always stay fresh. I kind of going off of the pitch to teach comic books in a scholastic setting. I wrote my college thesis on the relevance of comic books and why that relevance will never die. It's because there are always things to draw off of in reality that ground comic books and lay the baseline for why they're so engaging, whether readers realize it or not. And
yeah,
once you I feel like once somebody becomes a comic book fan, like they just get, more often than not, they get lost in it. And you can only stay on the surface of comic books for so long before you start realizing, like, wait a minute, these are saying something to me, these are speaking to me, these are resonating with me because I can relate to them. And of course, like, you hear the stories about like Clark Kent is the everyman, Peter Parker is a relatable high school teenager. Like that's, all well and good. That's like surface level relatability, though I still feel like there are problems at the roots of these comic books that dig deeper and ask questions of the reader that they might not be comfortable answering, but it opens them up, and if they come into it like just like single-minded, then they might come out with a different perspective. And I really appreciate that comic books can do that. I know that they've done it for me, and they've kind of shaped the kind of creative person that I am and the way that I approach comic books, but also just the way that I approach things in my day-to-day life now.
Well, I mean, there's a really great quote from Grant Morrison from Super Gods, which is the novel that he wrote.
Okay. I haven't read that. I should read it.
Oh, so good. But the quote is, "We live in the stories we tell ourselves."
100% true.
Yeah, it's 100% true. I mean, like we talked about it last episode, I think, and
Yeah.
you know, obviously talking about it again, but like just the media that you consume, it does change how you think like about things, and whether you consciously realize it at first or not, like it makes that effect.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just the fact that so many different books are able to do that and touch on so many different things is incredible.
And in so many different ways, because there are, you go into a comic book store and you see a crazy slew of books lining the wall, but they all have a different story to tell. That can, like, at some point or another tug at a heartstring within you. But it's all about just like finding what works for you and what doesn't, because not everything is easy reading, but everything does have something to say.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this book definitely has a lot to say.
Yeah.
The story's so good so far.
Yeah.
I mean,
we didn't get too deep into it. I mean, at a point we really couldn't, just because it's so early on in the book, but it's already like planting the seeds to raise these questions, and I can't wait. We should definitely revisit it some point down the line when a little bit more of it has been developed, because
100%.
I feel like a lot of it right now is up to just like speculation to see like where it's going, but that groundwork is being laid. So again, I just want to give a big shout out to Willow Wilson and Christian Ward, because this is so good so far, and I can't wait to keep reading it.
I was gonna shout out the art again too, because it's so fantastic. Like, if you haven't seen CJ Ward's art, please just Google him.
I'm hoping Sean can get some of the stuff from the book in here, but there's a splash page that I just keep looking at when they're about to start writing in the tail of the comet on their ship to preserve their fuel reserve.
You can
Beautiful.
Just the amount of details that you can just stare at that page and find new things that just blow your mind.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's so good. His color palette is phenomenal.
It's chef's kiss.
I really appreciate his panel layouts and the framing.
Yeah.
In a lot of the interactions too, like the framing is spectacular. Like, you'll have people inside frames inside the panels, like in like window outcrops and like things like that. That's so good. I like the variation in his like panels sometimes, like with the circles and different curves and stuff.
Yeah, it never feels stagnant. Like, it's always, I feel like the panel always reflects the movement of the story, and when things pick up, things get a little bit more chaotic with the paneling, but like it's never like in your face, like I can't understand what's going on. But then in the more I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's a very subtle thing that happens.
Yeah, but it's subtle, because I feel like it's subtle and it's not. It's subtle in the way that it aids the storytelling, because you go through it and you're like, oh yeah, like this makes sense as I'm reading it. But then, I don't know, me personally, like I'll go back and just, once I'm done reading a page, go over it and like analyze the visual aspects of the page, and then
same.
I pick that apart and I'm like, wow, this really helped me get through that page, and like it really like I don't know, intensified the gravity of the situation. But then in more quiet moments, it's a little bit, the paneling is a little bit more standard and a little bit more I guess for lack of a better word, just standard like comic book paneling. But
I mean, organized, I guess, would be like rigid. I don't want to say rigid, but like
it's a little bit more familiar, almost like, I feel.
Yeah, like it's more like standard or normal, I guess, would be a way to.
Yeah.
But then I love how he has the like there's some panels where the there's a specific term for it, but where like the panel like stops, like it just goes into negative space. Like you don't get the full outline of the panel, Like if it's a rectangular panel, the like black lines will stop at a certain point.
Yeah. Because it leaves it up to like your, like going back to like just the, reader's engagement in this. Like it is up to the reader to fill in a lot of these blanks. So when something like that occurs, you just kind of take it as it is, and you're like, oh, like it doesn't disrupt the story because you don't see the rest of that box. It's like I know what's going on here, and I know the service, the purpose that's serving.
Yeah. Oh, it's all so good. It all just flows so well.
Yeah, it
does.
Story it's a very easy
and the
read.
art.
I can't recommend this enough to anybody who is looking to get into indie books, or somebody who's looking for a new indie book to read. This is a great read. 4 issues out so far. It doesn't take a long time. You can bang it out in like an hour or two. It takes me a little bit longer just because I do go back and forth like between stuff, analyzing stuff. But you know, even if you're just taking it at face value, I don't want to discourage anybody who reads comics for that, because it is like
just casually.
It is above like above everything else. It is a medium of entertainment. So, but you will, if you take it at that value, you will still get a bunch out of this book because it's just so engaging and it's just drawn beautifully, and I can't say enough good things about it.
Dude, highly recommend.
Definitely.
Highly recommend. So yeah, not that the like praising Invisible Kingdom like segment is in the back. So I mentioned at the beginning, but I haven't finished it yet. I didn't get around to knocking out volume 4 last night. I thought about it, but
tisk, tisk.
So I know, man. Hey. So last, I think like Monday, so a week before this episode's going up, actually, I started reading No Man's Land.
Okay.
And I read the first volume like kind of like casually over like last week, but then on Friday night, I finished volume 1 and I started volume 2, and I finished volume 3 yesterday. So Saturday. So not yesterday for the time of this recording, but
I was like, for a second, I was like, what do you mean not yesterday? Yesterday was Saturday, but
no,
yeah,
I know.
When this goes up.
Yeah, it's it. Yeah, gotta think. Trying to think of the gif of the dude like tapping his head. But yeah, no. So I powered through like volume 2 in like 12 hours, and then read all of volume 3 in like probably like 5 hours total. I like read half of it and then like took a break and ate something, and then like came back and like finished volume 3. They're like around 500 pages each.
That's a lot,
for
dude.
like the volumes, by the way. So they're long.
Beefy.
Yeah, they're big, which is the reason that it's the same thing I mentioned with Nightfall last week. It's the reason that I hadn't read them before. But again, along with Nightfall, dude, yeah, I'm like, damn, like this is a lot to read. Like, I know everyone talks about it and everyone says it's such a good book, and so I was like, same thing that happened with Nightfall. I got them on sale on Comixology. They were each like $5,
Can't go wrong.
Yeah, that's like 2,000 pages for like $20. Like, okay.
Not bad.
Yeah, so I did that, and so I've been reading through that. I've really been enjoying it. I think that it's, if you don't know, No Man's Land is a story where basically this massive earthquake hits Gotham and just pretty much obliterates the like town. The bridges connecting Gotham to the outside world get destroyed. Subway tunnels and stuff like collapse. The city's in ruin pretty much, and it's declared a no man's land by the federal government. It's not technically a part of the U.S. anymore whenever the story starts.
Wow.
Like, yeah, and everyone who's there is trapped in there. No one's allowed to leave, and no one's allowed to go in. They literally have military like patrolling the bay like around Gotham and the bridges, and there's mines like in the bay and the surrounding rivers and stuff. There's you can't get out.
As if Gotham couldn't get any worse.
Dude, right? And so yeah, it's very interesting. The first volume really highlights the shift in life that has to happen there. It starts off and it's day like 93, I think, in No Man's Land.
Wow.
And
so
because I mean,
in it.
Yeah, you're in it. Like the people have like somewhat acclimated to this, and like they've been dealing with it for like 3 months. So, but it's really interesting, and I like they highlighted a lot in the first volume, but just how much life has to change because of this.
Sure.
Like there's no power, there's no like running water, and so like it's primitive again, and like there are people like. It's really cool because a lot of the villains like take up areas of Gotham and like just declare them their areas.
Sure.
So it's basically just a bunch of turf wars. Like Penguin has an area, Mr. Freeze has a spot, like a couple different like low level gangs like have areas that they're controlling. The GCPD has a very small corner that they're controlling and like trying to expand. At the beginning of No Man's Land, Batman is actually MIA, like he's not there.
Wow. Okay.
And so Oracle is like narrating it for a lot of the beginning and just like talking about it, and she's trying to like catalog the events because she has different like, for lack of a better, they're agents, I guess. I was going to call them spies, but they're not really spies. She has different agents like reporting to her from the streets and stuff.
Cool.
And so yeah, there's a bunch of like turf wars, but it's really interesting seeing how like goods and supplies and things are used, because like there'll be different traders and whatnot, and like, you know, like a cell phone's useless because there's no cell phone towers,
Right.
and like a flashlight is less valuable than a coat, because like if you have a coat you're at least warm at night, and if you have a flashlight at night, like someone's going to see that you have that flashlight and they'll come steal it from you.
Exactly.
Like, and so it's
that's so
there,
interesting.
yeah, it's like so many, like there's one issue straight up where like an apple, like a fresh apple is the most valuable thing that like you could that you can have, and it's just really cool like seeing that highlighted, like especially at the beginning. It just really makes you think about how different society is now compared to like if everything just falls away.
Yeah.
Like, and like just all infrastructure fails pretty much, because I mean that's what's happened. Like they don't have anything now, like they're just having to fend.
Yeah.
And so that's really cool to see. Like there's one instance too where this guy is like he's got this apartment building or something that he's like staying in, and this guy tries to like get in there, and he's like, no, like get away, like this is like my area, like I protect this. And the dude's like, what happens whenever you go to sleep? And then like the next panel shows him like setting up like cans like on a wire, you know,
Yeah.
to like that way if someone like passes by they'll like make noise.
Right.
And the dude's like, if you give me shelter, like I'll like look out like at night. And so they like make a deal, you know. But it's just like seeing things like that just puts into perspective like what everyone is having to do to just survive.
Yeah. It's like a fight for everybody on a daily basis, and that's
It's
crazy.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so wild, and especially like in Gotham too. Like
in Gotham.
yeah, like which is already awful. Like if Gotham couldn't get, like, just imagine Gotham being worse than it is on like a regular basis.
It's so hard to think about that, but I guess it's like that taken to an even bigger extreme, which I guess, you know, is what we've kind of been talking about, is just thinking about things on that grand of a level to like then walk it back in your mind to think like, oh, like what if this happened? What would our society do?
Yeah. It is kind of like that, and like it really makes you think about that. One of the cool things that they also use is like all the different gangs and like villains and things, they use like spray paint to mark their like turf.
Okay.
Like on the different, they each have their like symbols that they will mark like on the walls and whatnot. And like at the beginning you see Batgirl like shows up in the it's in Cassandra Cain's outfit.
Okay.
Spoiler, it's not Cassandra Cain at the beginning. I'll refrain from saying who it is, but
damn, I want to know now.
Yeah, read the story.
Yeah, exactly. I'll have to. Touche.
But yeah, she like shows up because there needs to be like a bat in Gotham, you know.
Yeah, right.
And she starts like tagging the walls with like the bat symbol and stuff, which is just really cool. It's funny to see like a bat symbol like spray painted on stuff.
Yeah.
But and so, you know, eventually Batman does show back up, but like he shows up like 3 or so months after like No Man's Land has started, and like he realizes very quickly like how different it is. Like prior to like No Man's Land, you know, he would want to be seen like as little as possible.
Yeah.
But like by the time he comes back, like people aren't afraid of him anymore.
Yeah. Like
at first, like he's been gone, and like they've adjusted to this life, and like also no one like believes that he's back at first. And so he like goes from not wanting to be seen like normally to where he's like, I need everyone to see me like as much as possible, so they'll like spread the fact that I'm here.
Yeah.
And like he one of the first villains that he takes down is Scarface, and
cool.
it's really cool because like whenever he's trying to get like recon on him at one point, like he is in this building and he's like interrogating this guy, and one of Scarface's men like comes around the corner and like shoots at him once, and then like Batman runs and like leaps out the window, and like the guy doesn't shoot again, and he's like, why wouldn't he like shoot me again? And like it's because the dude only had one bullet. Like Scarface would only allow his men one bullet, and like Batman puts it together. He's like, well, they'd rather use one bullet to defend themselves rather than like a bullet to attack an unarmed person. It's just a waste of a bullet.
Yeah.
And so just like small things like that are really cool. I'm gonna spoil like part of what happens there, but the way that he gets his like fear level, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it, like back up, is like he takes a gamble and he like goes and like takes out Scarface, and then he's like standing in the middle of like the turf and he's like shouting at everyone, and like one of the guys like shoots at him and he kind of like grazes his like cape, and he's like, the first guy was like a bad shot, and he's like, hopefully the second guy is better, and like the second guy like shoots him and like it hits him in the back and he like drops down, but then he like stands back up, and like, you know, everyone sees him like stand back up, and like he takes like a couple more shots, and he's like I took a hunch that none of them had armor piercing rounds. And like, wow. They didn't, obviously, but just like, it's just so badass like seeing Batman get shot like a couple times and then just like stand back up.
Yeah,
and like,
that's awesome.
Everyone just pretty much shits themselves and they're like, okay, like we'll do what you want.
Yeah, because he's like, nah, like, you're in my fucking city.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, that's really, really cool to see. But it's just interesting, and like one of the things he says too whenever he first like comes back, he like is trying to help someone at one point, and like he gets there like late, and he's like, I have to like relearn the entire city. He's like, buildings aren't the same as they were, like they're destroyed and like in ruins, and like some alleyways are blocked off and like things like that. And that's just like something I didn't even really think about, but like that's such a good point, that it's just completely different than how it was and like how he was used to operating in it.
Yeah.
Which is just so interesting. And then there's a cool dynamic too with like Gordon and the police, because like Gordon wants to obviously like take back a lot of Gotham and like keep it under like control with the police. But he faces a lot of moral dilemmas and like how far he's willing to go to do this, because I mean there technically is no law now.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it's every man for himself, more or less.
Yeah. And so there's some dissent in like within the GCPD. They end up calling themselves like the Blue Boys instead of just the GCPD.
Blue Boys.
But like, yeah. But that's a really interesting like arc that's there too. Gordon kind of turns into a bit of an asshole for a little bit. He's very bitter about Batman having left at first.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine why.
Yeah, he like doesn't want his help whenever he comes back too, and like, but he starts being kind of. It's interesting, but the dynamic is really it's well done there, and then like so it like transitions, and it's just really cool seeing Batman having to just like go day to day like in No Man's Land, just trying to do what he can, like trying to stop as much evil as he can like as he's going through, and of course, you know, being Batman, he's just like trying to do it by himself at first. But it's really cool in like the third volume, he like at like the end of the second and like also in the third, he like comes to terms with the fact that like he needs help, and so he like calls in the Bat Fam, and like we get a bunch of different, like we get like Nightwing and Robin and Huntress and Batgirl, and they're all, and like Azrael is also a part of this too. Which I like seeing him, because this is, you know, post Nightfall,
right.
And so he's like a good guy now.
That's rad.
And so, yeah, it's really interesting seeing him help as well. And so, yeah, there's just a bunch of really cool, like the series bounces back between like focusing on some of the different Batfam characters and like their own like struggles in No Man's Land, and them taking on a bunch of different villains. A bunch of different villains are highlighted throughout. But it's just really cool seeing them do what they can and kind of like working together and trying to like get the city back. I'm even at the point now where I'm like, I don't like, and they ask Batman this a lot throughout the story, but they're like, how can we expect to get the city back? Like there's no, like it's destroyed, like it's just in ruin. How can we, and like the government has given up on it. Like how can we possibly rebuild? And I'm like, yeah, man, how the fuck are you going to do this, Batman? Like, I don't, like, I'm at the point where I don't know how it'll, like, turn around. So I'm interested to see, like, where the fourth volume goes with it.
Definitely. That sounds so interesting. Like, because, you know, you have to wonder that going through the book, is everything going to get back to the status quo at the end of this? Is there going to be, like, fallout after the fact?
Yeah. So there's, like, probably, like, 520 pages, I think, in the last volume, because the last like 20 or so pages in each book is like the cover gallery, you know,
right.
Which just has like all the covers throughout. But yeah, so there's like 500 or so pages left of story for me to like get through to see how this like concludes and like wraps up. But I think there's one really big Joker moment that I think happens in No Man's Land.
Okay.
And it now has to happen in this last volume if it does happen in this story. That I'm anticipating, which is going to be very heartbreaking whenever I get to it. It's honestly one of the worst things that Joker has like ever done.
Has he shown up in the story thus far?
He has.
Okay.
He's shown up a couple times.
Okay.
He hasn't had a big like arc in it. He's had a couple. I think he's had like 2 or 3 like just single issues that he's appeared in. Like there was one where he like had a confrontation with Azrael.
Okay.
And there's another issue actually that was mainly like focused on him and Harley Quinn, which was really cool.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, dude, it actually, that issue like made me realize how much I missed the classic like Jester costume for her.
Yeah.
Cause it it looks so good.
It's like, just like it's like a badass costume, you know. It's like I don't know. I feel like that is so closely tied to her character, and that's why I don't really like who her character has become, because it's just like this over sexualized woman, like version of Deadpool. Essentially, that's what I feel like it's become, and she's not. She's just a watered down version of the character that she used to be. I don't read Harley Quinn stuff, so I could just be speaking out of line there, but that's just like kind of what disenchanted me with the character.
I feel like that's kind of the perception of what her character is now a lot of the time, and like in some instances I would kind of agree. I don't know. I honestly am more of a Harley Quinn fan than like most people. I'm not like a huge Harley Quinn fan, but I definitely, and like I don't have as much of a problem with modern Harley Quinn as a lot of people do, I would say. But I'm excited, kind of off topic, I'm excited for these Black Label books that are focused on her. I don't know if you've seen any of the promo for them. They look incredible. That's maybe a different topic.
Maybe I'll check them out. I'm not opposed to getting into stuff. It's just I don't know. That's just the way that I perceive her character personally. But I also I haven't thrown myself into her stuff for that reason. So it could just be like a self-fulfilling prophecy in that way for me.
Yeah. But no, yeah, her classic Jester costume is just it's
top
too
tier.
good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really dislike any of her like other looks that much. Like they're all like pretty okay to me. But like, oh, dude, Jester costume is just, it's so good. Yeah, like you just said, top tier.
Definitely.
Would not be sad to see that make a return.
No, I want to see it.
Yeah. But yeah, no, the story, it's really good. It's a very interesting story. I will say my one like gripe with it is there has been like a decent amount of filler issues.
I remember you saying that to me before when you started, at least when you started reading it, and you were telling me that you were getting into it. It's like that's disappointing, because especially when the story's good, you're like, why is this filler issue even here? Yeah,
and like I'd seen some people say it like in my mentions, because I've been tweeting about it on my Batman account, like as I've been reading.
Yeah, definitely.
And people would be like, oh yeah, I liked it, but there was too many filler, or like I didn't like it because there was too many filler issues and like things like that. And yeah, I can definitely see that. Like there's more filler issues than there should be.
Yeah.
But the thing, we were talking about this, and like I kind of just skim those, because like you can just kind of tell like whenever a story is like not that essential to the like overall, and so I'm just kind of like flipping through them rather quickly. I'm like, okay. Some of the dialogue for like pedestrians and thugs is also just very 90s and awful. And so I'll skim that pretty quickly. Yeah, it's I don't even want to try to do an impersonation. I can't. But
just
so I'll like skim that too.
Background dialogue, I think everybody can get a sense of what that is.
Yeah, I feel like you can guess. But yeah, so that happens, and that's just kind of like, but I mean, besides that, I think it's really, really great. Just like what the story set out to do, and like how much it's exploring, and things like that are really cool. There's a lot of fantastic moments in it. It's one of those where it's such a big Batman story, like in his history.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited that I'm making my way through it, that I'm almost done with it.
Right. That just
very excited to see it.
Yeah, hearing you talk about some of those elements of the story really reminded me of, just because it's fresh in my mind, some of the beats of Last Night on Earth, the latest and greatest Batman team up with Snyder and Capullo.
Yeah,
that book
which is fantastic, by the way.
So amazing, and I can't wait to see where it goes. But it kind of just like backtracking a little bit to what you said about how people are expecting Batman to kind of figure out what to do with Gotham and how to get it back on its feet. I feel like the scope of Last Night on Earth is a little bit bigger than that, and without getting too deep into it, because I'm sure it's newer, I'm sure not everybody has read it, but we can have this discussion on a later episode. But It's just like he expects that. It seems like he expects that of himself in Last Night on Earth. Like he has to be the one to fix everything, and because he has to find a solution. Like, and people are telling him that there's no solution, that this is just the way that things are, and he refuses to believe that. And
yeah, he's like, no, that's not. He's like, this is my city. I'll make it right.
Exactly. Like, and so to see like those, like these milestones in his history, like at the core, a lot of these things continue to come up because things are always changing, and kind of just going back to how we're always talking about our reality's relationship to the stories that we read. It's like there's always something new to discover, but having these fundamentals still be at the core of these stories for these characters, Batman's always gonna feel that sense of responsibility, and it's just interesting to see how different creators kind of have Batman tackle that.
Yeah.
So this definitely sounds like a book that I want to pick up after I get around to picking up Nightfall and reading that. It'll be one giant Batman step at a time.
Yeah. No, they're definitely they're big books. There's no doubt about that. But it's definitely worth it, I think. Like at the end.
Oh,
also,
sure.
I recommend picking them up on sale, like if you can, because it's a pretty penny if you don't.
Yeah, I'd like to get the same score that you did, because I don't know if I can drop it without a sale.
Yeah, because they're like 25 or $30 each for like volumes. Yeah, they're pretty. They're hefty.
Yeah.
But I need Comixology to have another sale on Batman already. I'm trying to get those Golden Age omnibus like volumes.
Oh, definitely, dude.
But
the covers for those are awesome too.
Oh yeah, so good.
I love them.
But yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
So I guess that just about does it for this second episode.
One
so
thing before we do the plugs, I just want to say, with this being our first video session, I like that people can have like a little bit of a bridge from where with where the name came from, because I've been drinking a coffee this whole time.
Nice.
So,
I've totally just shit on the name and been drinking water. So.
That's okay, dude. We'll change the name to like coffee, and then in parentheses also water and comics.
Also water, just as like a small subtitle like underneath it.
No, that's funny. I hope that people are receptive to the video, because it's cool, and I feel like it makes it more engaging. Let us know if it makes it more engaging, if you like seeing the interaction a little bit more, because I feel like some people are just, listeners, and they like to put things on. At least for me, sometimes I like to do that, just like put podcasts on while I'm doing things around the house. But sometimes it is also nice to feel like you're more of a part of the conversation.
Yeah,
so
it's just really, it's more interactive.
Yeah,
I would
having
say.
both versions of that play out, I think, is a nice choice to give people. So
yeah, I like that we have that option.
Yeah,
of doing that.
So I hope you guys appreciate it.
Yeah, again, shout out to Sean for the overlay.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, let us know what you guys think about that, because that template is pretty cool, and I feel like it's very telling of the two of us as comic book fans, which is pretty cool. He like really captured that well. So
yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I dig it.
So now we'll plug our social media.
Definitely.
So where can people find you at, Evan?
So I'm on Twitter at webheadev, and I'm on Instagram at Evan McGuire Art.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at APBatman with 2 T's. And then also on my Batman Twitter at Batman Files, which I believe our ads are actually on the screen also, if you happen to be
I think so.
watching.
That's why I wasn't getting too hung up about, because I feel like sometimes it doesn't sound the way that it's spelled, but it's there in the description whenever, so you can find it.
Oh yeah, it's also in the description.
Oh, on the screen. So. You meant like on the template. I'm just still like, it's still a transition for us, so I'm like, oh, that's what he meant.
Yeah, no, it should be in the description and also on the screen.
Yeah.
So if you go check us out on those. I talk about Batman a lot on the Batman account, obviously. So
yeah, I post a lot of my artwork, original stuff, fan art, whatever. So yeah, go check that stuff out on Instagram.
It's fantastic art, by the way.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I've been enjoying those like daily drawings that you're doing. Those are really cool.
Yeah, it kind of just helps me to keep myself in line on a day-to-day basis, keep myself like just in it and staying sharp. But it also, like, I don't know, it's just cool content to have, like, to just put out on a regular basis, because there's longer stuff that I work on that I can't post as regularly, so it's a nice way to just like stay active,
Yeah, exactly. And then also, if you're not already, be sure to follow our Twitter at The Media Bite.
Yes.
where you can find all the latest updates and like news and stuff in pop culture.
We have a lot of good writers writing awesome editorials and reviews and stuff like that too. So be sure to show them some love.
Oh, 100%. Very great group of people we've got
Definitely.
working over there. So yeah, I mean that. Oh, and please be sure to leave a like and review on whatever you happen to be listening to this on, whether it be Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. All of it means a lot. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys very much for listening. We really appreciate it. It all helps us to keep doing this.
Yeah, 100%. So that just about wraps up
Awesome.
the second episode of Comics and Coffee, brought to you by Media Bite. Later.
Thanks, guys.